The room was quiet in the way only midnight could make it. The small fan on the ceiling turned slowly, pushing warm air around without really helping. Ion lay on his bed, staring at the faint crack of light slipping in from under the door. The rest of the house was asleep. His phone lay beside him, screen dark, battery almost dead. Tomorrow was a normal day. School, homework, nothing special. That was why the sudden flicker of light against the wall made him sit up. At first, he thought it was lightning. But the sky outside was clear, and the light didn't come from the window. It shimmered across the wall like water, bending and twisting, casting strange shadows that made no sense. Ion rubbed his eyes. Sure, he was half dreaming. Then the air changed. It felt heavier, like the moment before rain, and warmer, as if something unseen had entered the room. The fan above him slowed for a second, then continued turning as if nothing was wrong. His heart began to beat faster. The light gathered near his cupboard. There was a sharp sound, not loud, but deep, like metal cooling after fire. The space near the cupboard folded inward, as if the room itself was taking a breath. Ion slid back on his bed until his shoulders touched the wall, and then she appeared. She fell forward slightly, catching herself against the cupboard door. The light vanished the moment she was fully there, leaving only the soft yellow glow of Ion's bedside lamp. The girl stood frozen, breathing fast, her eyes wide and searching. She was not human. Ion knew it instantly, even before his mind tried to deny it. Her skin had a faint silver-blue shade, like moonlight on water. Her hair was darker than night, floating around her head as if gravity had forgotten it for a moment before settling. Her clothes looked thin and strange, marked with patterns that shifted when he tried to focus on them. She looked young, not a child, but not an adult either. Their eyes met. For a long second, neither of them moved. Then the girl made a small sound, something between a gasp and a whimper, and rushed toward the closet. She slipped inside and pulled the door shut just as Ion shouted in surprise. The room fell silent again. Ion's hands shook. His thoughts crashed into each other, loud and confused. Ion. This was impossible! Aliens did not appear in bedrooms. Things like this did not happen to normal people in normal houses. He waited. Nothing happened. Slowly, he slid off the bed and stood up. His legs felt weak, but they held. He took one step toward the closet, then another. His mind screamed at him to run, to wake his parents, to pretend this never happened. But something else held him there. She had been scared, not angry. Not dangerous, just scared. "Hey!" he whispered, his voice barely louder than the fan. There was no answer. He reached out and knocked softly on the closet door.
I won't hurt you."
The door creaked open a little. One eye peeked through the gap, large, dark, and filled with fear. Ion swallowed. "You're safe."
"I think this is my room."
The girl hesitated. Slowly, the door opened wider. She stayed close to the closet, ready to retreat at the smallest movement. Up close, Ion noticed marks on her arms, glowing faintly, as if heat still lived under her skin. Her breathing was uneven, like she had run a long distance. She looked at him, then around the room, then back at him again. Her lips moved, but the sound she made was not a word he understood. Ion shook his head gently.
"I don't understand. Sorry." She frowned, confused, then tried again, speaking in a different tone.
It still meant nothing to him. When she realized this, her shoulders dropped slightly. She raised one hand and pointed upward. "The roof?" Ion asked. Her eyes widened. She nodded quickly, then made a sweeping motion with her hand, followed by a sharp downward gesture. Her face tightened with fear. Something fell. Something burned.
Ion's stomach twisted. Your ship? He asked quietly.
She hesitated, then nodded. A low sound escaped her throat, filled with sadness and panic. She hugged herself, and the glowing marks on her arms pulsed faintly. Ion thought of the strange light, the heavy air. He thought of the quiet night outside, unaware of anything wrong.
It's gone?
He asked. She nodded again. Slower this time. Silence stretched between them. The world felt fragile, like it could break if either of them moved too suddenly. Footsteps sounded in the hallway. Ion froze. The girl's eyes snapped to the door. Panic flashed across her face. She looked around the room desperately, then back at him, silently begging. Ion? His mother's voice came softly through the door. Why is your light on? His heart pounded. Without thinking, he stepped in front of the closet, blocking it with his body. I couldn't sleep, he said, forcing his voice to stay calm. I was just thinking.
There was a pause. Go to sleep.
It's late. Yes, he said quickly. The footsteps moved away. Only when the house fell silent again did Ion realize he had been holding his breath. He turned back to the girl. She stared at him like he had just done something impossible. You can stay here, he whispered. For now. She didn't understand the words, but she seemed to understand the meaning. Her shoulders relaxed a little. She sat down slowly on the floor, as if her strength was finally leaving her. Ion grabbed a glass of water from his desk and offered it to her. She examined it carefully, then took a small sip. Her eyes softened. She made a quiet sound, almost like thanks. Ion sat on the bed, keeping some distance so she wouldn't feel trapped. His mind was still racing, but one thought stood out clearly above the rest. Something terrible had happened to her, and somehow, out of all the places on Earth, she had ended up here, in his room. Outside, the night remained calm. Cars passed, dogs barked in the distance. The world slept peacefully, unaware that a girl from the stars was hiding in an ordinary bedroom, trusting a human she had just met. Ion looked at her and realized that his life, quiet and normal until now, had already changed forever, and this was only the beginning. The girl did not sleep. Ion noticed it when the night grew deeper and the house became completely still. He lay on his bed with his back against the wall, pretending to rest, but his eyes kept opening on their own. Every time he looked toward the floor, she was awake, sitting quietly with her knees pulled close to her chest. She watched everything. Her eyes followed the fan as it turned. She listened to distant sounds outside the window. Even the small ticking clock on Ion's desk made her tilt her head, curious and alert. She was like someone waiting for danger to return at any second. Ion cleared his throat softly. You don't sleep? She looked at him, then shook her head slowly. Okay, he said, unsure what else to say. I don't sleep well either. That made her pause. She studied his face, as if trying to understand something deeper than words. Then she reached out and touched the floor lightly with her fingers. A soft glow spread beneath her hand, forming thin lines that looked like drawings made of light. Ion sat up straighter. What is that? She looked surprised, then quickly pulled her hand back, and the light vanished. Her shoulders tensed again, like she feared she had done something wrong. It's fine, Ion said quickly. You can do that. I'm not scared. Ah, that was not completely true. He was scared, but not of her. She relaxed a little and tried again, slower this time. The glowing lines returned, forming shapes, simple ones. A circle, a line, another circle. Ion realized she was trying to communicate. He grabbed a notebook from his desk and a pencil. He sat on the floor, leaving space between them, and drew a small stick figure. This is me, he said, pointing to himself, then to the drawing. She watched closely. Then she pointed to herself and hesitated. Slowly, she placed her finger near the drawing and changed it. The stick figure became taller, thinner, with long shapes near the head. Not human, but still simple. "You," Ion said softly. Her eyes brightened. Encouraged, he drew the room, the bed, the door, the window. He pointed around as he drew, showing what was what. She followed carefully, nodding. Then she drew something of her own. At first, it was just a shape, large, round, surrounded by sharp lines. Then she added smaller shapes around it, breaking apart, drifting away. She pressed her finger hard against one part of the drawing, and the glow flickered unevenly. Ion felt a tightness in his chest. "Your ship," he said. "It broke?" She closed her eyes and nodded once. "Oh," she added another shape, smaller, falling, alone. Then she pointed to herself. Ion understood.
"You escaped." She looked at him for a long moment. Slowly, she nodded again.
This time, there was relief mixed with sadness. The glowing drawing faded on its own. They sat quietly for a while after that. The fear in the room had not disappeared, but it had changed. It was no longer sharp. It was heavy instead, filled with questions neither of them could yet answer.
Ion checked his phone. No messages.
No alerts, nothing on the news. Whatever had happened above the city, it had not reached the world below. "Do you have a name?" he asked. She blinked, then tilted her head. She made a soft sound, slow and careful. It did not sound like a word he could repeat. He tried, anyway. The sound came out wrong, broken and awkward. She stared at him, then let out a quiet sound that might have been laughter. She shook her head gently and placed her hand on her chest. She spoke again, slower, dividing the sound into parts. Ion tried again. Still wrong, but closer. Her eyes softened. She nodded. "My name is Ion," he said, pointing to himself. He wrote it in the notebook. She looked at the letters with interest. Then she carefully copied them with her finger, glowing lines forming the same shape. She pointed to him, then to the name. Something warm settled in Ion's chest. The night passed slowly. When the first light of morning crept through the window, the girl finally lay down against the wall, exhaustion catching up to her. She closed her eyes, but her hand stayed near the closet door, ready to move.
Ion stayed awake.
He watched the door. He listened to the house. Every small sound made him tense, but morning came like it always did. Birds, distant traffic, his mother moving in the kitchen. Normal sounds. It felt strange, knowing how close something impossible was to being discovered. When his parents left for work, Ion quietly closed and locked his bedroom door. He turned to the girl and held a finger to his lips. "They're gone," he whispered. She sat up instantly, alert again. He brought her food, bread, fruit, water. She tested everything carefully, sniffing and touching before tasting. Some things she liked, others she pushed away politely. When she ate, the glowing marks on her arms faded further. That worried Ion. "Is that bad?" he asked, pointing. She considered, then shook her head. She touched the marks and made a slow downward motion. "Less. Weak. You're tired," Ion said. She nodded. He thought for a moment, then opened his old laptop. It was slow and loud, but it worked. He showed her pictures. Earth, cities, people, space. Her reaction to space surprised him. She leaned closer, eyes wide, studying images of stars and planets, as if she had never seen them before. When he showed her Earth from orbit, she froze. She reached out, not touching the screen, just hovering her fingers near it. She made a sound filled with wonder. "You've never seen this?" Ion asked. She shook her head slowly. That made no sense. She came from space. She had a ship. How could Earth surprise her? She drew again on the floor. This time, she drew straight lines, perfect shapes, clean paths. Everything was ordered. Then she drew Earth as a messy circle, full of uneven marks and overlapping lines. She pointed to the straight shapes and made a stiff motion with her hand. Then she pointed to the messy drawing and tilted her hand, uncertain, but curious. Ion smiled a little. Yeah, he said. We're messy. She studied him, then nodded thoughtfully. Later, when the sun was higher, a low hum passed through the air. Ion felt it more than heard it, like pressure in his ears. The girl stiffened instantly. Her eyes filled with fear. She grabbed the notebook and drew fast. Shapes moving above the city. Lines sweeping downward.
They're looking for you,
Ion whispered. She nodded. Panic rose in his chest, but he forced himself to think. They don't know you're here, he said, more to himself than to her. They don't know humans. She stared at him, confused. He thought of all the things humans used that made no sense to machines. Old wires, broken signals, crowded streets, noise, everywhere. An idea formed. Stay, he said gently, pointing to the closet.
Quiet. She hesitated, then trusted him. She slipped inside and pulled the door almost closed.
Ion opened his window and turned on his old radio. Static filled the room. He turned the volume up, then down, changing stations at random. He placed the laptop near the window, screen glowing, and left his phone charging nearby. The hum passed again, then faded. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, the girl stepped out. She looked at him with something new in her eyes. Not just fear, respect. She touched her chest, then pointed to him, then placed her hand flat over her heart. Ion did not fully understand the gesture, but he understood enough. Whatever was happening beyond the sky, one thing was already clear. Humans were not helpless, and she was beginning to realize it. The next 2 days passed like a strange dream that refused to end. Ion moved through his house carefully, always listening, always watching. From the outside, everything looked normal. Neighbors came and went. Children played in the street. Cars honked, vendors shouted, and life continued like nothing had changed. But inside his room, the world felt different. The alien girl stayed hidden most of the time. She learned quickly. When Ion lifted a finger, she became still. When he pointed toward the closet, she moved without sound. She learned the pattern of the house faster than he expected, memorizing footsteps, door sounds, and even the way his parents cleared their throats before speaking. She was smart, very smart. At night, when the house was quiet, she watched him write in his notebook. She copied letters again and again, glowing lines tracing the shapes of human words. Ion taught her simple ones. Water, food, water, quiet, safe. She repeated them in her own way, connecting sound, shape, and meaning. Her focus never broke. Not once did she grow bored. You learn fast, Ion said one night. She looked up at him, confused by the words, but she understood the tone. She tilted her head slightly, then pointed at him and made a small circling motion near her head. You think a lot? He guessed. She nodded. That made him smile. The glowing marks on her arms had almost faded now. Only faint lines remained, barely visible in the dark. She seemed weaker, too, moving slower, sitting more often. Ion noticed everything. You need help, he whispered one night, more to himself than to her. She watched him closely, as if she understood more than she let on. On the third morning, the hum returned. This time, it was stronger. Ion felt it in his chest like a deep vibration. The windows rattled slightly. Outside, a few dogs barked, uneasy. Birds flew from the trees all at once. The girl stiffened, her eyes wide with fear. She drew quickly on the floor. Shapes above the city, many this time, sweeping lines crossing each other. They're searching harder, Ion whispered. She nodded, then drew a symbol he had not seen before. A sharp shape, repeated again and again. She pressed her finger hard against it, her glow flaring brighter. Danger. Ion's mind raced. Hiding her in the closet would not be enough forever. Whatever was above them was patient, methodical. It expected advanced technology, shields, signals. Humans had none of that. What humans had was chaos. Ion opened his window again. He listened to the street. A group of kids ran past, shouting. A bus honked loudly. Someone nearby played music too loud, the sound distorted and broken. Noise. He looked at the girl. They can't understand us, he said slowly. They don't understand how we live. She stared at him, uncertain. He grabbed his notebook and drew the city. Not neat like before, but messy. Wires crossing everywhere. Buildings overlapping, signals clashing. He filled the page until it looked confusing even to him. Then he drew the shapes she had shown him before. Clean, straight, orderly. He pointed at the clean shapes, then shook his head. He pointed at the mess. She watched carefully. Slowly, her eyes widened. She touched the messy drawing, then looked around the room. At the clutter. The old electronics. The mix of new and broken things humans kept using anyway. Understanding slowly settled on her face. Her people expected patterns. Humans were patterns that broke themselves every day. The hum faded again. That afternoon, Ion did something risky. He took her out of the room. It was only to the bathroom at first. He made sure the house was empty, then carefully guided her down the hallway. She moved silently, pressing close to the wall, her eyes taking in everything. The mirror startled her. She froze when she saw her reflection. Her hand rose slowly, touching the glass. She tilted her head, studying her own face like it was something new. Ion watched quietly.
You're real, he said softly. You're here.
She turned toward him, then back to the mirror. She placed her hand against the glass, then pressed her other hand against her chest. Real. After that, she seemed calmer. They returned to the room quickly, but something had changed. She trusted him more now. She followed his movements without hesitation. That night, she drew something new. Not her ship. Not the searchers. Earth. But this time, she drew people around it. Small shapes, different sizes, different forms. All touching the planet in some way. She looked at Ion and made a questioning sound. "You want to know about us?" he said. She nodded. He showed her more pictures. Humans helping each other. Crowded streets. Hospitals. Markets. Homes. He did not hide the mess or the problems. She watched everything. Then she drew her own people. They stood far apart. No touching. No overlap. Ion understood without words. They don't help each other much, he said quietly. She looked down. That night, the hum returned again. Closer than ever. Lights flickered across the city. Ion's phone buzzed with emergency alerts about unknown atmospheric activity. People panicked online. Videos appeared, blurry and confused. The girl trembled. "They're going to find you," Ion whispered. She shook her head quickly. She pointed at him, then drew a line from herself to him. Then she crossed it out. She did not want to bring danger to him. Ion clenched his fists. You're not leaving, he said firmly. Not like this. He made a decision then. He took out every device he owned and turned them all on. Phone, laptop, radio, old tablet. He opened apps, closed them, changed signals constantly. He opened the window wide and let city noise flood in. Then he did something unexpected. He invited chaos. He turned on the lights in every room. He left doors open. He moved things around. He made the house look lived in, loud, confusing. The girl watched in amazement. Above them, sensors searched for quiet, controlled hiding spots. They found none. The hum grew frustrated, uneven. Then, slowly, it faded. When silence returned, the girl collapsed onto the floor, exhausted, but safe. Ayan sat beside her, his back against the bed. His heart raced, but he smiled. We're good at this, he whispered. Surviving. She looked at him, truly looked at him, and for the first time she smiled too, not with her mouth, but with her eyes. Somewhere above Earth, machines adjusted their calculations. Humans were not advanced. Humans were not efficient. Humans were something far more difficult to understand. And that scared the stars. The city changed after that night. People talked about strange lights and weak signals, but no one had answers. News channels argued with each other. Scientists made careful guesses. Some said it was weather.
Some said it was a satellite problem. Most people stopped paying attention after a day or two.
But Ayan knew the truth. And so did the girl. She stayed hidden, but she was no longer only hiding. She was learning. Every day, Ayan showed her more of the human world. Not just pictures now, but routines. He taught her how humans lived without thinking about it. How they waited. How they planned small things and ignored big dangers until the last second. How they helped strangers without being asked. She watched him make tea for his mother. She watched his father fix a broken switch with tape instead of replacing it. She watched neighbors argue loudly and then share food the same evening. Confusing, but also warm. She copied human expressions slowly, tilting her head, raising her eyebrows, sitting with her hands relaxed instead of tight against her body. Little changes, but Ayan noticed all of them. One evening, she pointed at his chest and made a slow tapping motion. Heart? Ayan guessed. She nodded. Then she tapped her own chest. The sound was different, softer, slower. You're different inside, he said. She nodded again, then drew two shapes in the notebook, one large group, tightly connected, one smaller group, separated, distant.
She pointed to the large one. Humans.
Then to the small one, herself.
You're alone, Ayan said quietly, her eyes lowered.
That night, the hum returned again, but this time, it was not searching. It was waiting. Ayan felt it before the girl reacted, a low pressure in the air, steady and calm. Like something patient that knew it would win eventually. The girl stood up slowly. She drew a single shape above the city, larger than before, heavier.
They changed tactics, Ayan whispered. She nodded.
She drew arrows, not sweeping anymore, but pointing. Careful. Focused. They're narrowing it down, he said. She looked at him with worry. Then she did something unexpected. She drew a path, not upward, sideways. She drew the city, then the edge of it. Then beyond. Empty space. Escape. Ayan understood instantly. You want to leave? She nodded, but her eyes were filled with conflict. If you leave, he said slowly, they'll follow. She hesitated, then shook her head. She drew something new, a signal. Small, controlled, focused on herself. She pointed to it, then crossed out the city.
They'll track you instead of Earth. Ion realized.
She nodded again. His chest tightened.
That's dangerous. She did not deny it. Ayan sat down heavily on the bed.
He stared at the floor, thinking. His mind raced, but not with fear.
With ideas. You don't have to do this alone, he said finally.
She looked at him, confused. He smiled slightly. Yeah. That's kind of our thing. The next day, Ion began preparing. He did not tell anyone what he was doing. He just acted normal. He walked through the city with her hidden beneath oversized clothes and shadows. Moving during the loudest hours when people were everywhere, no one noticed. Humans rarely noticed what they did not expect. They moved through markets filled with noise, through streets packed with vehicles and shouting, through places filled with broken signals, old wiring, and overlapping systems. The girl struggled at first. The noise overwhelmed her. She flinched at sudden sounds, at people brushing past her without apology. But she did not panic. She trusted Ion. They reached the edge of the city by evening. An old industrial area, half abandoned, full of rusting structures and unused machines. Signals here were weak and confused. Perfect. Ion led her into an old warehouse with a broken roof. Inside, the air was thick, with dust and echoes. No cameras, no working power. She stood in the center and closed her eyes. The glowing marks on her arms returned faintly, pulsing in slow rhythm. Ion stepped back. The air shifted. Not violently, not loudly, just changed. Like the space itself was paying attention. A small light formed above her hand, not bright enough to be seen from far away. Controlled, precise. She focused hard. Far above Earth, something noticed. The hum returned, stronger now, but focused. Ion felt it lock onto her like a finger pointing. She opened her eyes and looked at him. She made a small sound, soft and unsure.
You'll come back, Ion said. Not as a question.
She hesitated, then nodded slowly. The light grew brighter. The warehouse walls vibrated slightly. Dust fell from the ceiling. Then, just as suddenly, everything stopped. She was gone. Silence filled the warehouse. Ion stood there for a long time. The sky above darkened as night fell. The city lights flickered in the distance. Then his phone buzzed. Emergency alerts again. This time, about atmospheric movement shifting away from the city. People online shared videos of lights moving toward the horizon. Away. Ion exhaled slowly. Earth was safe, for now. Days passed. The hum never returned. Life slowly went back to normal. News moved on. People forgot. But Ion did not. Every night, he looked at the stars. And one night, something changed. A soft glow appeared in his room, familiar and gentle. He stood up slowly. She appeared exactly where she had first arrived, but she was different. Stronger, calmer. She smiled the way humans smiled now. She held out her hand. In it was a small object, glowing softly. Not a weapon, not a device meant to harm. A gift. Ion stepped forward. The universe had noticed humanity, and it had decided not to underestimate it again. The glow in the room faded slowly, like the last light of sunset. The air returned to normal. The fan continued its slow turning above them, as if nothing impossible had just happened. Ion stood very still. The girl stood in front of him, calm and steady, no fear in her eyes now. She looked healthier, stronger. The faint glow on her arms was no longer weak or broken. It flowed smoothly, like it belonged there. She held the small glowing object carefully, both hands open. Ion did not reach for it right away. He looked at her face first, at the way she stood, at how human she seemed now, and yet still not human at all. You came back, he said softly. She nodded. She placed the object gently on his desk. The glow dimmed, becoming warm instead of bright. It did not hum. It did not buzz. It simply existed. Ian sat on the edge of his bed. His heart beat fast, but not from fear, from something heavier. You're leaving again, he said. She did not answer right away. Instead, she sat on the floor like she had done the first night. She touched the notebook, opening it to a blank page. Slowly, carefully, she drew. She drew space. Not messy this time, not broken, but wide, deep, endless. Then she drew her people. But something was different. They were closer together now. She drew lines between them. She pointed at the drawing, then at herself. Then she pointed at Earth. Then at Ian. Understanding hit him slowly.
You told them, he whispered, about us. She nodded.
She drew another picture. Humans again. Messy, loud, helping each other. Standing close. Then she drew eyes watching from far away. Observing. Learning. Ian leaned back, breathing out slowly. So they know now? She hesitated, then shook her head slightly. Not fully, but enough. She tapped her chest, then pointed to the stars. Scout? Ian guessed. She nodded. Then she pointed to him. Then to the notebook. Then to the object on the desk. Ian stared at it. That's for me? She nodded again. He picked it up carefully. It was light. Warm. When he held it, images flashed softly in his mind. Not pictures. Feelings. Ideas. Connection. Understanding. Not power. Not weapons. Tools for learning. For listening.
Ion swallowed? You trust us? She looked at him seriously.
She trusted him. That mattered more. They sat together for a long time, saying nothing. Outside, the city slept. Somewhere far away, a train horn sounded. A dog barked once, then fell quiet. Normal sounds. Human sounds. Finally, she stood. She looked around the room, one last time. At the walls, the window, the clutter, the ordinary things that had hidden her when the stars were searching. She touched the closet door lightly. Then she turned to Ian. She placed her hand over her heart. Then she placed it over his. The feeling that passed between them did not need words. Gratitude. Respect. Promise. The light returned gently. No heat. No force. Just a door opening. She stepped into it. Before she vanished, she looked back. She smiled. And then she was gone. The room returned to silence. Ian stood there long after the light faded. Life did not change right away. School continued. Exams came and went. Friends complained about small things. News talked about new problems. The strange lights in the sky became jokes. Then memories. Then nothing at all. But Ian changed. He watched the world differently now. He noticed how people helped each other without thinking. How strangers shared food. How humans fixed problems with half-broken tools and stubborn hope. He understood something the stars had missed. Humans were not strong because they were perfect. They were strong because they were not. They adapted. They cared. They refused to give up on each other. At night, Ian studied the glowing object. It never forced knowledge into his mind. It waited. It responded only when he tried to understand. Slowly, carefully, he learned. Not alien secrets, universal ones. Patterns of thought, ways of cooperation, methods of solving problems without control. Months passed. Far above Earth, messages traveled quietly. Not warnings, observations. Humans are unpredictable. Humans use weakness as strength. Humans protect the unknown. Classifications updated. Earth was no longer marked as insignificant. Not a threat, but not harmless either. A new word began to appear in quiet star systems. Respect. One evening, as Ion sat on his roof watching the sky, the object warmed slightly in his hands. A feeling passed through him. Not danger, not urgency. Hope. Somewhere out there, the girl watched too. And somewhere beyond even her, others were learning a simple truth. Humanity did not need to conquer the stars. The stars would come to them. Not with fear, but with curiosity. And that was how it began. Not with fire, not with war, but with a scared alien girl choosing to hide in a human room, and a human choosing to help her.